Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about the new Kingsman film, which is Kingsman: The Golden Circle. I apologize that this review is up pretty late. Um, Had tons of stuff going on that the week that this film came out in. I managed to see the Lego Ninjago movie that week instead of this one, so that's why this one's a week later than usual for recent movies. But I am a huge fan of the first Kingsman film. I'm a huge fan of Matthew Vaughn. So Kingsman 2: The Golden Circle was definitely very high on my list as far as films I was anticipated for. I couldn't wait to see what Matthew Vaughn did. I just loved that first Kingsman movie. It was funny. It was action packed. I love the characters in it. I love the style that Matthew Vaughn used in that first movie. So I was very excited to see what exactly a continuation of that story could offer, just because I loved that first Kingsman film so much, and I really wanted to see where the story would go after the first film. So in this film, you guys, Kingsman: The Golden Circle, we follow Eggsy again. He's the lead secret agent of this film and the previous film. He's a young kid, and he's very experienced this time around. You can tell that he's gone through several missions with Kingsman by now. He's starting to see a girl that he saw at the end of the first film that definitely ended on a very funny note in the first movie as to how they started dating and so forth. So they're pretty much living together now. They've been in a relationship for a long time. They're even considering marriage and so forth. But while all that's going great, while everything's kind of going fine for Eggsy for a while, a drug cartel queen named Poppy has a drug in the market that everybody seems to be using, whether it's crack or cocaine or heroin. There's a lot of different ways that people can take in this drug that Poppy is basically giving around everywhere, so people can have easy access to this drug and everything. So basically, people start getting like this blue veiny look, and that's kind of when people start to get suspicious that this drug that Poppy is giving around to everybody kind of can do something to them. So it's kind of like what Samuel L. Jackson's character did in the first Kingsman movie, where everybody got this free cell phone service, free internet service, all this like free technological services, and it's kind of a little suspicious after a while. And so this new Kingsman film kind of plays off that as well, where everybody's getting this drug. It's super cheap. It's easy to get a hold of. But why is it that way? Why are people getting blue and veiny, and what's going on with this drug? What's kind of the hint and the kick behind this thing? So as time progresses, Poppy reveals on a live social stream of some kind on TV that basically the U.S. president has to give her what she wants, or else the drug will get worse. People will get paralyzed. People could potentially die if they don't get a certain antidote in time. So basically, with the negotiation through the U.S. president, if he does what she wants, she will find a way to make sure that everybody who's taken this drug will get an antidote for each and every person. But the president has to do exactly what she says in order for her to go through with this and for him to go through with his end. So there's this huge conflict with that. It gets even worse when Eggsy's girlfriend has taken this drug as well. So everybody's taken this drug. It's just out of control, and it's up to the Kingsmen to stop Poppy from her evil drug cartel plan. So overall, guys, I thought this film was okay. And that's really too bad because, I really liked that first Kingsman film a lot, really hoping for a great sequel, and it ended up being just okay. So let me go over some positives and negatives as to why I feel this way, and maybe at the end of this review you'll understand why I kind of felt this way. And who knows, maybe when you see this film or see it at Redbox or whenever you plan on seeing it, maybe you might feel this way as well. So for my positives and negatives of Kingsman 2, The Golden Circle, I liked how it highlighted moments from the first film in good ways, kind of how it went over how Eggsy has learned and has experienced things, why he's this expert Kingsman the way he is. They do go over Colin Firth's character again, and I can't go into detail as to how Colin Firth's character comes back for those who saw that first Kingsman film and wondering, how in the world could they bring him back for a sequel and so forth. Can't go over that, but they do explain it in the movie pretty well. But like I said, they do highlight moments from the first film. So certain characters like Eggsy and Merlin, who's played by Mark Strong, whenever something happens that kind of is connected to that first film, I like how they highlight it. They definitely find ways to pursue this story while highlighting and helping us remember just how great that first Kingsman film was. Something kind of cool that I thought the sequel did every once in a while. I also like how Mark Strong's Merlin character has a bigger role in this film. He had a big role in the first Kingsman film as well, but I feel like in this film he's given field work to do as an agent. He's not just the guy behind the computer. Him and Eggsy get more to do with each other. I feel like him and Eggsy, Taron Egerton, who plays Eggsy, have great screen chemistry in this film. There is a lot of scenes where the two of them have to work together to get somewhere and everything. So I liked how they gave him a bigger role. He feels more involved with the story. Something kind of cool I thought they did with him this time around. Overall, I liked Julianne Moore's villain. I thought she could have been written better. Nowhere near as good as Samuel L. Jackson's villain from the first film. His villain in that first film was just very original, very well performed. I like how Samuel L. Jackson kind of put his own childhood problems within that character and so forth. Julianne Moore's villain, this Poppy character, it's not as deep as what Samuel L. Jackson's character did. It's just not as interesting as a villain, but I like what she did here. I do like that she really worked with what she had. She really had to compete with Samuel L. Jackson. There's a lot of story structure things that both her character and Samuel L. Jackson's character had in the first film that are very similar to each other. They're not completely horrible people, but at the same time they are horrible people. They're the villain of the movie, but they've done things in their past that are kind of good, that aren't entirely bad. They both have ways of completely reversing what they're doing and so forth. So I saw a lot of similarities in their villain in that way. Just the way Samuel L. Jackson did it in the first film, I thought was way better than what was done here. But like I said, for being such a huge competition and for kind of being her own villain and making sure she wasn't too over the top with this, I thought Julianne Moore did a pretty good job playing the villain, though I thought her character could have been written better. So that's really not her problem with that. There is a certain celebrity that makes a cameo appearance in this film that actually is pretty much more than a cameo appearance after a while. You do see him more than once in this film, which I thought was kind of cool. Can't tell you who it is just because I want to make sure that when you see this film, you'll kind of might be surprised like I was. But it's very fun, very comedic. Had a lot great comedic lines here. Whenever he does show up on screen, I thought they gave him some really funny stuff to do. So really cool to see this person, for those who know what I'm talking about. He's a very famous performer and musician in real life. Great comedic role that I thought Matthew Vaughn gave him in this movie. Just a ton of fun to watch. I also like the overall look of Poppy's lair. It's kind of like this 1950s pop culture collection of things. Like there's an old movie theater, an old diner. There's like an old festival thing going on at one point. I just like the way her lair works and how it looks and how it feels. It kind of fits the character very well. It's just you just kind of want to walk around in it when you get to this place. It just kind of has that feel to it. So as far as, her lair and Samuel L. Jackson's lair in the first film, I thought Poppy's lair was pretty much cooler overall. There's just more things you wanted to look at and everything. So I thought the way they made her lair looked pretty cool. Matthew Vaughn's color palette from the first film is back. Definitely that same colorful, cool look that you remember from the first film. Definitely a graphic novel-y kind of look, which he's definitely maintained, in X-Men First Class, in Kick-Ass, the first Kingsman film, and has maintained here. So Matthew Vaughn's color palette has definitely not missed a beat. Definitely that same color palette you fell in love with in those previous Matthew Vaughn films. I also like to see that we saw a more experienced Eggsy this time around. You really do get the sense that all the training he had in the first film, all the harsh times, all the troubled times, all the tragic times are all coming into one. He really is that secret agent that Kingsman has always imagined him to be, that Colin Firth's character always imagined him to be in the first film. Just a really cool evolution of the character that they played around with this time around. And, obviously Taron Egerton did a great job portraying this character again. But for my negatives and why it's overall not as good as the first film, it just doesn't have, this is for my negatives, just doesn't have that wow factor that the first film. I just remember when I first saw the first Kingsman, I was wowed by the comedy. I was wowed by the action. I was wowed by the look. I liked how they kind of found the right balance of realism and comedy and kind of, over the top spy film, but not too over the top. They found the right balance in the first film, and this film just could not find that balance. It just was too over the top, or too comedic, or too action packed at times. It just really had a hard time finding that balance this time around. So unfortunately, this film just doesn't have the wow factor that the first Kingsman film had. I also thought the overall action scenes were just way too over the top. I feel like any character could survive anything without a scratch on them, that any character could just fall off the side of a road at 80 miles per hour and still live. It just has that feel to it. And I feel like the first Kingsman film was not like that. I really feel like in the first Kingsman film, if you lost an arm, you lost an arm. You were not going to get it back. If you were hurt or if you fell off something, it would take you a long time to recover. This film, I feel like everybody's invincible, and as a result, there's just not a lot at stake, and it feels like anybody can't really get hurt in this movie as a result. So I just felt it was a little too over the top this time around. Also, when it came to the statesman characters, I just really felt like there really wasn't a lot to them. Channing Tatum plays one of them. He just basically just has a gun. One of them has like this electric rope thing. Jeff Bridges just sits at a desk pretty much the whole movie. He doesn't really do much. So there just really isn't much of the statesmen that the Kingsmen team up with in this movie. I just wasn't very impressed with them. They're just, they're named after alcoholic beverages and stuff. I just really could not get into him. There was just something about him I just really didn't like. I really just want another Kingsman film that just focused on the Kingsman instead. I like the idea, like the overall, like going to the U.S. to get help for this, but the way they did it, I thought was just not very good. I also don't like how everything felt green screened in this movie. I felt like a lot of shots just felt very artificial, very digitalized. I wanted something more organic and natural, like what the first Kingsman film offered. Like you're like on a set somewhere, or you're really out there with these people somewhere. This time around, it just felt very green screened. I can't get into too much detail on this, and I know I'm running pretty late in this review now too. I didn't like the overall direction of how they explained how Colin Firth's character came back. Just they really didn't need Colin Firth in this movie. I felt like they could have just explored Merlin some more or introduced a new agent. I really didn't care for the direction they took Colin Firth in this film. And for, like I said, for those who saw the first film, why he's back in this film really doesn't make a lot of sense. There's also just not as much emotional weight in this film. When a character dies or a character gets hurt in this film, I didn't really feel a lot of emotion. I just didn't feel the emotion the way I did in the first film. And I think this film would have benefited from having a 20-minute cut from the length, because it's about 2 hours and 20 minutes long. I think exactly 2 hours would have been perfect, but it is 2 hours and 20 minutes, and I was able to feel the length as a result, and that's really too bad. Overall, Kingsman 2, I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. It's okay. There's a lot of good things going for it, but a lot of things that aren't going good for it. If they do make a Kingsman 3, I don't mind waiting around for it eventually. I don't need it right away. It was all right. If it's a rainy day and you haven't seen the Kingsman 2 yet, it's an okay Redbox rental. I don't think you need to go to the theater for this one. 7.5 out of 10. It's an all right movie.